Okay, let's see. What do we have here? Beato Club members. Is anybody here? Ralph, are you here? I don't see anything on the chat here. There's 0 watching. Tyler, there we go. What's up? Let's see here. Is that Jan? Is that how you say that? Yann? Okay. I'm here to what's up, Tom? I'm here to answer questions. What do we do here, Jason? Jan, just like that. Just like that. Okay. I did a live stream on Instagram a little while ago. And I was talking about Chuck Mangione, who's from Rochester, who I remembered this instance. I've never talked about it on the channel before, but when I was in 3rd grade, which I realized was 1970, when I was 8 years old. That's what you are when you're a 3rd grader. Layla is in 1st grade, so she's 6, so 2 years after that. Hey, Monty. So there are live streams on Instagram, yes, Tyler. So 1970, I had a teacher, Miss Malm, her name was. She was my music teacher, general music teacher. And Miss Malm, I know you guys have never heard this story. Miss Malm was friends with Chuck Mangione. Now, Chuck didn't really get his career going until a little bit later. We're having some really bad thunderstorms here. If the thing lags, that's why. Hey, Kent. So Chuck, I'm gonna look up his when he did his first things. My music teacher knew him, and he came in and he answered questions and played for our 3rd grade. Okay, so I'm from Rochester. That's where Chuck lived, and Steve Gadd played in his band back then. And a lot of the people, the town I'm from, Fairport, New York, a lot of the teachers that taught at Eastman, the Eastman School of Music, which is one of the best schools in the world, lived in my town. Okay, Fairport, the village where I'm from, is a village of, at the time, about 5,200 people. But the surrounding county is called, the town is called Parrington. Okay, and the county is Monroe, but the town is what the school was drawn from. Phil, I did not see your post on the Beato book on Instagram. You can send me an email about it. So a lot of the professors at Eastman lived in my town for some reason. They're just, probably because of how much money they made. It was there was a wealthier suburbs like Pittsford that the people that people that worked at Kodak that were higher up lived in Pittsford. It was a wealthier suburb. But the Eastman professors' kids lived in Fairport. There's a guy that was a couple years ahead of me, John Beck. His dad was the drum professor, percussion major professor at Eastman, and John was the drummer of the jazz band and played in the orchestra. Played percussion in the orchestra, and just a number of Eastman professors' kids went to my high school, and we also had 11 full-time music faculty. Okay, I mentioned that before, which is a lot. The head of the department's name was Mo Sherrill. Mo had a doctorate from Eastman in music. Everyone that taught in our music school either went to Eastman or the University of Indiana. They were outstanding players, absolutely outstanding players and teachers. And everyone that was chosen to play an instrument, because you got chosen because of taking the musical aptitude test, the Seashore test, which you guys have heard me talk about before on here. So I got chosen, like everyone else in the music program, based on my aptitude for music. So, so that was the surrounding town. Parrington was 60,000 people. All the middle schools, which we call junior high schools, there were two of them, Minerva DeLand and Martha Brown, and they combined in Fairport High School in 10th grade. So the high school was 10 through 12. The two junior highs were 7 through 9, and my graduating class was about 750 people. So the school, high school had 2,100 people in it. Attention, send more White Hots. I know, right? White Hots is a thing of upstate New York, of Rochester. So, so this is what I'm growing up in, a music program that is so well funded that it had, in this district, that had, probably 5 elementary schools, then they had secondary schools, or, we didn't call them middle schools, but we had junior highs. There were 2 of them, and then 1 high school that was fed by a population. So you 11 music faculty to teach between these schools, these different schools. This is very unique, okay? And you have people like Steve Gadd from Rochester, and Tony Levin, and have a very rich tradition of players and teachers. There was a teacher named Dick Longale that taught. I never took a lesson from him. I never met him. He was in his 70s. And it was all the guitar teachers that I studied with took lessons with Dick Longale. And he was incredible with his chord voicings, and he was kind of like, every city had a person like this. In Boston, you had Charlie Banakis, who was younger than Dick Longale, but he died probably 2010. He was about 70 then, but he taught all the Boston guys. He was an ear training guy mainly, but an improvisation teacher. Jeff Berlin studied with him. He was a contemporary of George Garzone and what's his name? The sax player, who's great in Boston. Anyhow, this was a big thing. Music was a big thing in my high school. Music programs. It was not marching band centric like it is down here in the South. People are into marching bands. Nobody wanted to be in the marching band. That was they spent very little time with the marching band. It was wind ensemble, concert band, orchestra, and chorus. And every ensemble had 50 people, 60 people in them. I played in the wind ensemble. I played bass because that was the only string instrument. And I played in the orchestra. And in the summertime, on 7th and 8th grade, I played in a chamber music group. I played bass, and I remember when I switched from the cello to the bass, the first thing that we did, and we never played simple arrangements. We played professional versions of, we played the Barber Adagio for strings. We played that in high school, our high school orchestra, which was the best in New York State, probably one of the best in the country. But I remember in this chamber music group that I played in the summer, it was a small string orchestra, and we played the Brandenburg Concerto No. 3 in G major. I remember that. I used to play along with the record. I had the music, and we'd rehearse twice a week. So I was doing that in the summertime, Now the kids do nothing. They, play on computers and everything. And I was playing chamber music. So this is really because of where I was born. One of my best friends growing up, his name's Bill Tiberio. Well, he is now the teacher and has been for 30 years at my old high school. He's the band director. He conducts the wind ensemble, the jazz ensemble. We were roommates in college. We went to undergrad together. And Bill is an excellent musician. And his brother Dave, I played in a rock band in high school with, punk rock band. And Dave plays with my brother John in his band now. So this was Bill has his master's degree in music, and so there's all these professional musicians that I went to school with. So this is one of the reasons that I've gotten that I have given back through YouTube, through Instagram, things like that. Hey, Keola. So that's that's kind of a little bit more of my background that I've never really talked about. And when Chuck Mangione came in to talk to my third grade and play for us, I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember him playing his flugelhorn. He had his hat on and everything, just like he did in when he was doing Feels So Good. And I remember Steve Gadd being around town then. That was a drummer. So when I went to college, it's like, why don't the drummers play like Steve Gadd? Well, because I didn't realize that Steve Gadd was one of the greatest drummers of all time. So, and then some of the people that I was just lucky enough to meet. I mean, geez, I ran into Aiden Essen the first day I moved to Boston. My roommate that I met on the street in Boston, his name was Sky. I moved in with him. He had an empty room in his place. He was actually playing with Aiden, playing bass with him. Well, Sky used to play with Vinnie Colaiuta. And Vinnie called our apartment one time in 1985 or so. And I answered the phone. He's like, "Hey, is Sky there?" Yeah, he's here. This guy comes in, he's like, "You know who that was?" I said, "Who?" He said, "Vinnie Colaiuta." I said, "You know Vinnie Colaiuta? What? No way." So he said he's called Vinnie back, and we had a gig a few weeks later, and he invited Vinnie to come play, and Vinnie flew out to Boston and played in a small club, which he had never done. He'd already played with Zappa at that point. I'm trying to think if he was on the Holdsworth record, Secrets record. I think that was probably 1990 or so after that. But anyway, so yeah, that was. What are the chances, right? What are the chances? And I've known Vinnie. I talked to him the other night. We video chatted. I've known Vinnie for 30 years, 35 years pretty much. So I've been incredibly lucky. You might say blessed, because Beato means blessed in Italian. Okay, Phil told the guys from the Pedal Show about you and your channel, and just heard from them. Their response is very cool. Give them a call and ask them to contact us and drop in. I'm not sure how to contact them and drop in. I'm not sure what that means, but I guess I'd have to be in England to drop in. Let's see here. What else we got here? Grant Geisman was good. That was a great... I listened to that for the first time in years and years yesterday. It feels so good. And that's a really good solo in that. It actually was better than I remembered it. Way better. Ron asks, can you name me the top 3 things you took away from studying with Mick Goodrick? Mick saw the guitar as a contrapuntal instrument more than anyone that I had been associated with the guitar, different than anyone really. I want you to understand, there's a person that I don't talk about that was extremely important in my development. His name was Steve Brown. Steve was the guitar teacher at Ithaca College where I did my undergrad, and he was incredibly influential on me. One of the most influential people ever. And Steve's still with us. He's 77 now. I want to have him on the channel. He still lives in Ithaca. He's been retired since 2011 or so. That's lightning or thunder. Steve was so I only took lessons with Steve. I never was in the big band. I didn't take improvisation because I was a music ed major in my undergrad. But I was a double major because I studied guitar with Steve. So I took bass lessons, classical bass major, and everything related to that. And then my guitar part of it was my double major, but it was in jazz studies. And my lessons with Steve would be, I would go in and Steve would we'd play together over standards, but I would record every lesson. I have every single lesson recorded to this day. And Steve would play unbelievably great solos, incredibly melodic. He came kind of out of the Barney Kessel, Joe Pass school, but he had his own style. He was a very strong player rhythmically and could develop motifs unbelievably well. And he was an incredibly good reader. He conducted big band. He was a great solfeger, one of the best I've ever heard. And his son is a bass professor. I'm not sure. His son Miles he's in his 40s now, but he's a bass professor somewhere out in the Midwest at a university. So Steve was extremely important to me. When I got to school with Mick, I mean, I knew standards. I knew it. I could play anything with Mick because I knew every standard. I knew How High the Moon, Stella by Starlight, and All the Things You Are, and Cherokee, and Here's That Rainy Day, and My Romance, and Round Midnight, and Con Elma, and Recordame, and I mean, I knew every jazz standard you could possibly imagine. Triste, and Wave, and Desafinato, and Girl from Ipanema, and every Jobim tune, everything in the real book I knew. So that was a really big thing. So when I was studying with Mick, he was writing his book called The Advancing Guitarist, and I was his grad assistant. So I helped Mick through the editing of that book. I have all the original manuscripts from it, and so I would proofread the book. It was very tedious. Very tedious because it couldn't have any mistakes in it. And Pat Metheny, I want to say Pat funded the book, got him a deal with Hal Leonard, and Pat wrote the introduction for it. So that was a big thing that Mick worked on the first year. And I taught a lot. I taught the undergrad guitar players as well. TJ says, what do you mean by solfeger? Like solfege, like do, di, re, mi, fa, fi, la, solfege, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, or la, si, do. Steve was a movable do solfege expert. Just was incredibly good in solfege. He could sight sing any melody perfectly and never ever make a mistake. No matter how hard it was rhythmically. He grew up. His dad was a professional musician. His brother was a big band arranger, and taught, and so they had it in their family. They were pros. Jan, about the Beato book, I'm planning to study about 1 hour per day. How should you approach it? Simply follow along for an hour and divide it into section, theory, practice. When you don't understand stuff in my videos, go back to my early videos. And when you don't understand things, go to the book. Most music theory is memorization. That's the thing that people don't get, I think. That your ability to retain things, because that's, there is no other there's nothing else that, it's not about teaching concepts, it's about memorizing it's about memorizing things. Mick from that pedal show is a friend of yours, so you have contacts. Oh. Well, there you go. All right, well, hook me up with him. Send me his email, or have him email me. That's probably easiest. So when it comes to how to learn things, you literally just memorize the stuff in it. I know that sounds weird to say, but that's how you have to do it. You start memorizing the circle of fifths, okay? The key of C has an A minor. C is the relative major. A minor is the relative minor, right? The major and relative minor, or minor and relative major. They have 0 sharps or flats. G and E minor have 1 sharp. D major and B minor have 2 sharps. A major and F sharp minor have 3 sharps. E major and C sharp minor have 4 sharps. B major and G sharp minor have 5 sharps, and so on and so forth, right? And you just literally memorize it. E flat major and C minor have 3 flats. B flat major and G minor have 2 flats. F major and D minor have 1 flat. I'm doing this, I just see it. I literally see the chart in my mind. When it comes to intervals, how to name them. How do you name intervals? Well, you talk about the span of letters. If you're talking about C to E, well, how many letters are there? There's C, D, E. There's 3, so it's some type of third. Okay, then you count the half steps up. If it's 4 half steps, it's a major third. If it's 3 half steps, it's a minor third. All intervals have an exact number of half steps to them. You can literally start at the beginning of the book and move through it. Now, how long does it take to memorize it? Monty says E sharp minor has 8 sharps. I don't go into that. Victor does that. Victor Wooten. He goes all the way around and he adds in those extra ones, but he says that there are 30 keys. You can say that. I mean, once you understand the basic concept, then you can expand upon it. So I don't think it's okay. Then you go back and you start saying, okay, well, then you memorize the chord progressions. Okay, what is the chord sequence in a major key? Well, the 1 chord is major, 2 is minor, 3 is minor, 4 is major, 5 is major, 6 is minor, 7 is diminished. Those are triads. The 7th chords are 1 is major 7, 2 minor 7, 3 minor 7, 4 major 7, 5 dominant 7, 6 minor 7, 7 half diminished, or minor 7 flat 5. With each of those scale degrees, you have a name. Tonic, supertonic, median, subdominant, dominant, submedian, leading tone. Each of those has a mode that goes with them. With the first chord, the major chord, you have Ionian. The 2 chord, Dorian. 3 chord, Phrygian. 4 chord, Lydian. 5 chord, Mixolydian. 6 chord, Aeolian. 7 chord, Locrian. Just like with the melodic minor, there's an order of modes in the melodic minor. Your first chord, if it's a triad, it's a minor chord. The 2nd chord is diminished. The 3rd chord is augmented. If you make them 7th chords, a 1 chord is a minor major 7th. The 2 chord is a minor 7 flat 5. The 3 chord is an augmented major 7th. Each of them have modes. Melodic minor, Dorian flat 2, Lydian augmented, Mixolydian sharp 11, Mixolydian flat 6, Locrian natural 2, altered dominant, super Locrian, or diminished whole tone, whatever you want to call it. Okay? Harmonic minor has modes that go with it and a certain order of chords that go with it. The harmonic major, the same thing. The double harmonic major, the same thing. They have an order to them. I have the fluidity with this stuff because I understand this. I also understand what chords can be substituted from what scales. If I'm in the key of, if I have a G7 sharp 5 flat 9 chord, let's say, well, the only scale that fits with that is the altered dominant scale. Well, that's the 7th mode of A flat melodic minor, so it'd be G altered dominant, and you have to know what the triads are. You have a G diminished triad, you have a G augmented triad, you have an A flat minor, A flat sus 4, B flat minor, B flat sus 4, B augmented, and B augmented major 7th, and so on and so forth. These things that I know I memorized nearly 40 years ago. The key is remembering them. That is really the thing about this, is your fluidity with it. Can you grab this stuff? Can you write it down? If I were to do a lecture right now, I don't need notes. I just stand in front of the board and I lecture. And I write these things down. And I know what the scale degrees are. The whole tone scale is not the same as the augmented scale. No. The augmented scale is 1, sharp 2, 3, 5, sharp 5, major 7. That's the augmented scale. Whereas the whole tone scale is 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, sharp 5, flat 7. So knowing the difference between those is really important. Tom, music theory is always a mystery to you until you found my channel. Your explanation is easy to grasp. Yes, I think that seeing how things are related, like understanding the scale degree, the Roman numeral, the scale degree name, the Roman numeral, and the mode associated with it is extremely important. The 1 chord is called the tonic chord, and the Ionian mode goes with it. The 2 chord is the supertonic, the Dorian mode goes with it. You know, just like that, just knowing that. And then you start to, once you know that, then you start learning what secondary dominants are and how they relate to the primary chords. Because those chords in the key of C, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, are the primary chords. Well, C major has its own dominant chord, which is G major, or G7. But each scale degree, the 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 scale degrees, have a dominant that is related from another key, a secondary dominant. So for the 2 chord, it's A7. For the 3 chord, it's B7. For the 4 chord, it's F7. For the 5 chord, for the 4 chord, it's C7. For the 5 chord, it's D7. For the 6 chord, it's E7. Okay, so then they have a secondary diminished 7th chord. Each chord has that. Well, the primary diminished chord, not diminished 7th chord, the primary diminished chord is the 7th chord of the key, B diminished in the key of C. But if you were to make it into a 7th chord, it'd be a B half diminished, so a B fully diminished 7th chord, meaning 1, flat 3, flat 5, double flat 7. B diminished is secondary dominant of 1, secondary diminished 7th of 1. C sharp diminished is a secondary diminished 7th of the D minor, or the 2 chord, and so on and so forth. That's a D sharp diminished 7th is a secondary diminished 7th of the 3 chord. Now, how do I know this? Once again, I memorized it all. I memorized it. So everything in the Beato book I have memorized that I wrote 30 years ago. That's literally how you learn stuff. Because you really haven't learned if you can't repeat it back. I guess that's a is that a rhetorical question or not? I'm not sure. Like, let's get your opinion. Who wants to weigh in on that? If you can't write it down and explain it to someone, do you really learn it? Tyler, you find it memorizing increasingly difficult with age. I'm 57, and using your memory is like exercise. The more you force yourself to memorize things, the better your memory gets. I did things with Dylan when he memorized pi to 500 digits. It was just a fun thing that we did. 3.1415926535897932238462643383279. I mean, I'm reciting pi here because I remember it. Okay? But I practiced it. Well, I listened to Dylan reciting it, and I remember it. I remember the sound of it. I don't have a photographic memory, though. I have a memory that has been worked on for years and years. Hey, Martin, good to see you. But we habitually use our brains less and less over the years, so it takes an effort. It does, Tyler. And our brains have been outsourced to these devices here. If you look things up all the time, if you rely on your GPS all the time, your brain and those algorithms associated with memorizing directions will atrophy. Okay, you have to fire these things. If you don't swim for a while, like 50 years, and then you go swimming, you don't forget, but it takes a minute for the algorithms to kick in. Same with riding a bike. I haven't ridden a bike in 5 years probably. I didn't forget how to ride it, but those algorithms you have to work, just like playing a sport or anything. There are motor neurons that need to fire. There's there's so many elements of memory that need to that there's many different ways to memorize things. Keola says the best way to memorize is to utilize it. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Better said by you. Hawaiians of old had no writing system, but they memorized chants thousands of lines long. There you go. You met Tyler, right? I remember musical stuff I learned in my 10s and 12s easily, instinctually, exactly. And you do memorize through repetition. Through chunking is the best way to memorize. Chunking is breaking things down into small groups. I'll give you an example of chunking. If I were to chunk, I've talked about this before. If you were to take pi, most people know 3.14. Okay, 3.1415. Okay, 3.1415926. Okay, so I've added more. 3.1415926. 5358 is the next chunk. 3.14159265358. 979 is the next chunk. The next chunk after that is 32384. 3.14159265358. 979. Did I do it wrong? 3.14159265358. 979. 32384. Is that right? See, now I have to practice it. The thing with chunking with these musical devices like the major scale, the 1, 4, and 5 are major chords, 2, 3, and 6 are minor, and 7 is diminished. If you make them seventh chords, you put an extra third on top. 1 and 4 are major 7, 5 is dominant 7, 2, 3, and 6 are minor 7, and 7 is minor 7 flat 5, or half diminished. So just like that, this is exactly how you go through and do this stuff. You sit there, you memorize it, then you test yourself. It's tedious. If you're not using it all the time, it's hard to remember. If you write it out and teach someone, that is the best way to remember it. So Tyler, learn something, figure it out, and and then teach it to someone. That is, that's the best way to, to learn it for yourself and know it cold, is by memorizing it and teaching it to someone. So, I taught my kids these things. I taught them that G minor was G, B flat D, the D minor is D, F, A. I taught them the formulas to chords. I taught Dylan. That's how Dylan knows these things. That's how why he can name these chords, right? Because I have my own naming system where I use Lydian triads. Because if you can group things together, 1 sharp 4 5. If it's G Lydian, it's G C sharp D, right? 1 sharp 4 5. When Dylan hears that, he can immediately categorize it instantly. When I do these double polychords, I play the first one, and his brain's like, "Oh, that's F sharp major over E major," or whatever it is, right? And then the second, by the time I get to the second one, by the time I go boom, he knows that. Then boom, he listens to that. And that's it. Anyway, so Phil, you have to drop out. I have to drop out. This is a good place to stop here. I think that Isaac just said his book, Curious, Ian Leslie makes a compelling case for why we need to memorize things so our associated memories can function. I'm going to read this book. I'm going to copy this. I don't know this book, Isaac, and I really appreciate you saying that, because this sounds like the kind of book I would be interested in. I'm going to check this out. Tom, you like my Why Not You video? Well, that's the thing I always say. Like, somebody's got to be successful. Why can't it be you, I mean, is it... Okay, so my friends that have been successful on YouTube. Rhett. Keith. 5 Watt World. Keith. Nare. Amy Nolte. People that I knew right at the beginning of their channels. Why are they successful? Because they know me? No. But things that I've learned from making 700 videos, I've communicated with them. And it's, I mean, there's no secret to that. I mean, yes, you have to have a compelling presence, I guess, right? But you have to be able to convey information in a particular way to where people are interested in it. But if you're really good, and when my friend Keith did a history of the Telecaster and history of the Les Paul videos, those are so important. If you guys don't know 5 Watt World, it's so well researched. I mean, these are great videos that he did. I mean, they are the top videos on YouTube of the Telecaster. You look up the Fender Telecaster, Keith's video is the first one in the world. When he came here, he did a live stream with me. He had 200 subscribers. That was 4 or 5 months ago. And now he's got 3 videos that have 300,000 views that are the top searches on YouTube for those things. I mean, since the beginning of YouTube, you'd think that somebody else would own the top Telecaster video, not somebody that just started a channel that had 200 subscribers when he was on my live stream. Why not him, right? There you go. Why not you? You guys are the best. We'll talk later. Thank you. This was good.